So chemical toilets, we will come to that one by one, but what is the meaning of chemical toilets? Chemical toilets are basically like any other normal toilet, right? The commode that's there, that's found in Indian household, the commode that's there. In that commode, what do we use? We have a flush right here, correct? But in this case, what you have here is, a set of chemicals. You have a lot of chemicals here. So what happens is that the moment the human waste comes here, the chemical treats those human waste and it disposes it somewhere here in a box. Right? Normally you would find this kind of chemical toilets in flights, in aeroplanes. Right? The open air, for example, there are a lot of marathon races going on nowadays, especially, now that the winters have started. And they're all, marathons happen in open areas, right? During the marathon or before the marathon, once the athletes need to prepare themselves, they need to visit the washroom. So you will find chemical toilets, right? They can be lifted and shifted anywhere, right? They are like this small little door-like structure, right? Room-like thing. They can be shifted and they can be kept anywhere in the ground or in the field, right? So they actually have those chemical toilets inside, which uses chemicals to dissolve or to immediately act upon the waste and then dispose it within that only. Yeah, please go ahead. Waiting.
Yes, ma'am. Septic tank is a watertight chamber made of brick, concrete, or glass.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay, ma'am. Advantages. Septic tanks are suitable for places such as hospitals, isolated buildings, and cluster of houses where there is no sewerage. Disadvantages. Disadvantages. They require a lot of space. They are costly to set up. They have to be periodically cleaned. Water seeps to the ground, affecting trees and swimming pools.
Correct. So basically what did they say? Septic tanks are basically, these are made out of cement and mortar. If you see, this is the structure. This is made out of cement and mortar, right? And what is it basically? It is basically a huge pit, right? It's a huge pit, bigger than a room many a times, right? And what does it do? For example, if this is the, the outlet of a house's toilet, so all the excreta would all come and settle here. What happens? All the water gets, collected at the top and all the solid waste remains at the bottom. Right? So this is a very basic principle of sedimentation. This works on the principle of sedimentation. What happens is that all the sediments gets collected at the base of the tank, whereas all the water remains at the top. Now, what happens is that the water that you find is normally given out to the sewage or the sewerage system of the city. But there could be, small towns or cities where the sewage or the sewerage is not yet developed or planned. In those cases, what happens is that everything remains inside. Because it is so huge, it takes almost a year or a lot of months for it to be filled up. Then, they need to call up people from the municipal corporation and then they do the entire cleanup of this septic tank once a year. And then again it's ready to use, right? This is the advantage. The advantages are being that you can use it for each and every house, like each and every house can have a septic tank. 3 or 4 houses together can have a septic tank, right? And you can have it in towns and cities where the sewage system has not been developed yet, correct? What are the disadvantages? It requires a lot of space. Truly, it's bigger, as I said, and many a times it's bigger than even a room, right? They are costly to set up. They have to be periodically cleaned, as I said, depending on the usage, depending on the number of houses or the family members. Many a times it can take 6 months. Many a times it can take 1 year, or you never know, but there has to be a periodic check. You need to call up, people who would come and clean it up. There's a specific department for that. One very bad thing that happens is that all the dirty water, it gets seeped, right? All the dirty water seeps into the soil nearby. So what happens in case there is a swimming pool here? So you can imagine all the dirty water, can get in contact with the soil here and the swimming pool if it's a little old with cracks and crevices. Yeah.
Some words see the below water there is this large water is above water.
Above water, I think so. It's just scum. That's scum. Because, for example, see from your washroom, there's a lot of things which comes out. There could be human waste, there could be water, there could be soap water. Soapy water, you will see that it doesn't dissolve properly, right? It will form a frothy bubble kind of a thing with the water at the below. So this is the scum. Actually, when the water seeps, these dirty water seeps into the ground, it affects the trees because honestly, this is extremely dirty water, right? Unhygienic water. This has not been treated yet. So there are a lot of germs and microbes and lot of bacteria and fungus into this. So in case this seeps into the associated ground or the area, then it's very harmful for, whatever material, whatever, buildings and whatever is there. So as in swimming pool and other substances that's there. Correct? Now
Yes,
going to the, now going to the next portion is the chemical toilets. Okay, Unmana, can you please read it out? Chemical toilets.
Sewage disposal systems, chemical toilets. Aeroplanes and trains usually have chemical toilets. A chemical toilet uses chemicals to disinfect human waste and remove its bad odor. Advantages. These are portable latrines that could be set up anywhere. They do not require water. They control emission of foul odor. Disadvantages. They use toxic chemicals which are not advisable. These are costly. These are for temporary situations.
Correct. Good. So what are they saying? These chemical toilets, as I said, are being heavily used in aeroplanes, nowadays also on trains. And as I also said, because this works on a lift and shift technique methodology, as in, they would get a truckload of these chemical toilets, just these individual pieces, one truckload, and they'll ask, oh, if there is a mela or a fair going on in this ground, they will put two toilets each at the different gates, right? So once, it's done, on a daily basis, they'll lift the toilet and then they'll replace it with another chemical toilet in the meanwhile that they clean the earlier one, right? There are quite a few advantages. One main advantage is that it removes the bad odor, because what happens is that immediately there's a chemical which acts on it, on the human excreta, right? So there's a deodorizer, there's antibacterial, and there are other chemicals which are there to mask not only the bad odor but also to kill the germs immediately, right? It is portable, as I said, it is portable. One can, transport it anywhere. So this works on a lift and shift methodology. So it can be set up anywhere. It does not require water. That's the best part about it, right? It does not require water, just the chemicals act on it. And they control the emission of foul odor. So the foul odor itself is being controlled. That is itself by itself quite a great deal of job done. But, however, saying this, obviously everything will have their set of advantages and disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages? The chemicals that are being used are extremely toxic. Can you imagine, if there is a chemical which can act on the human excreta on an immediate basis, right? Mask the odor, kill the bacteria, kill the germs, right? Solidify it, make it into a little small, tiny, but not tiny, but then again, make it, quite precise and concise, can you imagine how strong the chemical would be, how harmful it could be, isn't it, for the environment? So that's one big disadvantage. And obviously the second disadvantage is that it is costly, right? It is not a permanent solution, as in people can't put it at houses, hospitals, offices, malls, etc. This is not a permanent solution. These are only for temporary solutions, right? For example, in aeroplanes, you one really can't afford so much water in flushing the toilet, right? So there's very little water that's being used, but it's more of air that's being used in this chemical toilet. Now we'll go to the composting toilets. Priscilla, can you please read out?
Composting toilets. A composting toilet is a system that converts human waste into organic compost and usable soil. Advantages. These are more environmental friendly. They require less water. They are well suited for village. Disadvantage. They require proper maintenance. They end up in emitting foul smell, encouraging breeding of insects and increase health hazards.
Correct. So basically these composting toilets, in most of the times, they are good for the environment at least, So, in the long run, what really matters is that what is good for the environment and what is bad for the environment. However costly be it, but if it is good for the environment, that means, half the job has already been done. Correct? So basically this composting toilet, the exterior of it looks the same like that of a WC, but what happens is that, there are certain, again, process that's been used to make the excreta compostable, and which can be converted into soil and used into the soil, right? Now, most of the times, these are suited for villages. Why villages, Priscilla?
Ma'am, because they use soil and it's muddy.
Right, no, that's because they do a lot of farming. And they would require a lot of fertilizer. They would require a lot of manure.
Ma'am,
So
and they also don't have a proper drainage system.
they also do not have a proper drainage system. So might as well, use the already existing waste into, intelligently, so that that itself can be diverted into the farmlands. And instead of buying chemical fertilizers, this can act as a organic fertilizer. All the human waste that's coming out can be used as an organic fertilizer instead of buying chemical fertilizers. Right? In a city life, we really don't need so much of organic compost and organic fertilizers, isn't it? What will we do? There's just buildings and houses and schools and roads. So composting toilets are of no use in cities. They are only suited for village or maybe in areas where there is a lot of agricultural land. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
As we said, this is environment friendly, the first and foremost point. So it has been encouraged a lot in Indian villages. Now, there are quite a few disadvantages, out of which, it requires proper maintenance, right? Because most of it, there is very little chemical intervention here. Very little chemical intervention. The most intervention or the most maximum things that are required is the infrastructure part. What is the infrastructure part? The infrastructure part would require a lot of pipes, lot of inlets and outlets, drainage systems, right? Several pits, soak pits, compost pits, several kinds of those pits. So one needs to see when which pit is getting filled up, when one needs to empty it. So these maintenance are required. They end up emitting a foul smell, obviously, and they encourage breeding of insects and increase health hazards, which is again, these things go hand in hand. If it emits foul smell, matlab it is, obviously there's no chemical involved, right? It is going the natural way. It is being treated the natural way. It is being taken into the farmland, which is like really open and huge and enormous, right? So obviously it will have a foul smell. And if something has got foul smell, that means it has got a lot of bacteria and fungus, right? So it will breed in further insects, and of course it will cause health hazards, right? So there has to be a step in between which will take care, or which will check that at some step the bacteria is at least killed. Or else, if it goes directly to the farmland, it will cause a lot of diseases. Those agricultural harvest, whatever comes out, the rice or the grains or whatever comes out, those will also carry certain amount of those bacteria, which in the long run, will come to the market in packaged food. So that's not right. So somewhere in between, there has to be a intervention where, the bacteria or the fungus are being killed.